Hey, what's up, YouTube? It's Logan, the Metal and Beer Snob here, and tonight I have a kind of a question for the YouTuberverse that I'm a part of. So, from my perspective, the early 2010s was a glorious time to be a metalhead. I felt so connected to the scene and so excited for so many new albums that were just coming out like every month. When I hear older metalheads talk about how they felt about, their scenes during like the 80s or even the 90s, yeah, it kind of holds true to me when I think back to the years between 2012 and 2016. But in hindsight, I'm wondering, is that just my personal bias? Is it because during that time, that's when I first got into extreme metal music, and everything felt so fresh and exciting? And it was also when I was first going to college. My college years were fall of 2012 through December of 2016. I was able to dedicate more time to metal music during the college years. And as soon as I started to work, real life and responsibilities set in, and hobbies such as listening to every single metal album that was coming out just kind of fell by the wayside, and compared to now, I feel like I'm barely trying to keep up. To me, it's a question that I want to hear the answer from metalheads that are of my era, so started in like the early 2010s, and from other eras, like, enjoyed metal music beforehand and after. Like, what is everyone's opinions of extreme metal during that time period? How does it hold up? Of course, I've got an argument to make here, so I've got examples lined up and a good beer to try. So, thanks for watching. Let's dive in. As far as beer goes, I'm just going to keep it simple. We're in the throes of summer weather here. It's like 90 degrees every day and super fucking humid. So when I see a beer that's a creamsicle IPA, I fucking jump on that shit. So cheers to Abita Brewing for giving the New Orleans population what we want. A beer that gets us drunk quicker, but still packs that summer punch. If you like creamsicles at all, you should definitely try this style of IPA. Alright, so for me, there are 4 key points that I want to make for this argument that the early 2010s was an extreme metal renaissance. The first, that there were a lot of amazing comeback albums in this era for extreme metal bands, especially extreme death metal bands. So, for me, when I was getting into the scene, this was really the first type of release that I was inundated with, were the comeback albums from some classic 90s death metal bands. The biggest one, and probably most important to me to this day, still has to be Carcass with Surgical Steel, an album which really just sees them combine their heart work, even their swan song and earlier death metal era, all together to make just one ultimate Carcass album, which I really haven't heard too many people talk shit about at all. Like, Surgical Steel is honestly one of their best albums and a near masterpiece, in my opinion. And I was able to buy this on release day, which was super fucking cool. And then for me, a legit masterpiece all the way through, and another album that came out in 2013, Gorguts with Colored Sands. So, I mean, this one, they are still embracing that, like, dissonant, progressive death metal that they had on Obscura, but they really rein it in. Like, Luc Lemay really does a good job of reining in the songwriting and really focusing it around a cohesive piece and a cohesive theme for the whole album. It's amazing. So believe me, I was absolutely floored when I heard both of these albums back to back in 2013, essentially. And then both of these bands started to tour. And a lot of the classic, like, 90s death metal bands started to tour as well. And then also, some of the bands that kept going that never really had to do a comeback album, they released great releases. One of the ones I want to talk about, which came out in 2012, Torture by Cannibal Corpse. This is my favorite Cannibal Corpse album, which I know could be blasphemy to some. This is an incredibly catchy, incredibly brutal, but still memorable release, like all the way through. Tracks like Scourge of Iron, Encased in Concrete, As Deep as the Knife Will Go, Fouled Home Then Killed, Rabid. That's half the album right there. So, this just shows Cannibal Corpse at their best, in my personal opinion, which is impressive. And for me as a metalhead coming into this band, believe me, I was blown away. Here, let's see if I can show off any other comeback albums or just great extreme metal releases from this era that are from classic bands still putting out classic albums, in my opinion. Point 2. There were a lot of amazing reissues in the early 2010s. I'm not going to dive into too many of them. I really just want to focus on one certain reissue that started to happen around the time I was getting into extreme metal. And that, of course, is when Relapse gained the rights to the Death discography and started to reissue all of the Death albums. And honestly, I mean, Death are one of my top 5 favorite bands, period. And I really don't think that would have happened if not for Relapse being as prolific as they were with their catalog. This is the first reissue that I was aware of as they were releasing them. Yeah, this is my 4th favorite Death album out of 7, which shows you just how amazing I think their discography is. And it's, of course, as soon as I bought this, I kept my eye out. I picked up their reissues of Individual Thought Patterns, Sound of Perseverance, Spiritual Healing, and also Scream Bloody Gore as they were released. So definitely, I think, very important, and especially important when you think about how big Death has become again. Like, I feel like they've really had a new renaissance in this era. I mean, just look at the tribute bands that are now touring for Death. I mean, we've got Death to All, Left to Die. 2 bands that are still touring on this material, and we're still seeing them. I still want to see them if either of those bands come even close to me. I think this is important, and I think if you were to talk to anyone who's around my age getting into, death metal, we all hold Death in high regard, and not just like the old school Death, but even the more progressive stuff as well. And then I also think there's like a whole new wave of heavy metal classics that have come out in the era of between 2012 to 2016. So many amazing albums from just a wide variety of genres and styles that were being developed and were underutilized until this era. I want to focus on some of those real quick. So, from 2012, we have Portal of Eye by Nia Obliviscaris. This is an Australian progressive extreme metal band. And these guys are crazy. They're like avant-garde, blackened death metal prog. It's crazy. The flute, the violin, the drumming, it's insane. And this album is a masterpiece. And some of my favorite all-time songs are on this fucking thing. Of the Leopard Butterflies and Plague Flowers the Kaleidoscope. Those two tracks are worth the price of admission. So, yeah, this came out in 2012, and I really do think ushered in a new era of progressive metal. You can look at some of the progressive metal bands that are still releasing albums to this day, and I think they're aping the formula that Neobla Viscaris started, or at least utilized, on this album. And then to get to more stoner metal from 2013, I want to highlight Sub Rosa, More Constant Than Gods. To me, this is their near perfect album, and it's a beautiful version of what stoner and sludge and even doom can be. It's got like twin violins, female vocals, but also harsh vocals when needed, and they really play around with that dynamic and that trade-off between like the clean singing and the harsh vocals. And it opens up with one of the best songs of all time to me, The Usher. So, highly recommend More Constant Than Gods. A beautiful album. And then getting to 2014, another doom metal band, Pallbearer. Foundations of Burden. And to me, like, you know, you could call this pitchfork doom and you'd be right, but this is that Candlemass warning doom mixed with a bit more atmosphere and emotional heft, and maybe a little bit of like shoegazy vibe from time to time. I think it works out perfectly. Tracks like Worlds Apart and The Ghost I Used to Be are literally spine-chilling to me. So, this is an absolute favorite from 2014. And then, as you can see, I'm moving 1 year at a time. 2015, my album of the year, Exercise in Futility by Migwa. MGLA, whatever you want to call them. This thing is perfect. It's a pulverizing, pummeling release of nihilism and just bleak black metal that really focuses on that melodic dissection style of black metal from the early 90s, but I think it modernizes it in a beautiful way and really repurposes it for a new generation of black metal fans. So I think this is a huge album and will be a huge album for a lot of people. And then finally, 2016, a blackish metal album, or this is kind of a black metal album, but kind of a whole lot more. I think it really highlights the trend in black metal towards the post-black, phase, which I know a lot of like truer metalheads might dislike it, but I absolutely love this album. This is Alcest Kodama, and this is them diving into their love for all things Studio Ghibli. Like, I just look at this album cover and it gives me automatic Princess Mononoke vibes. And I love that movie. And I love this album. This album is beautiful. This album is very emotionally driven. There's a lot of weight being portrayed in the songs. And I can really tell. And I think this is a classic. So yeah, Kodama. And then finally, I want to say that there was a revitalization of some classic genres during this time period. Albums were released that really just revived and gave a whole new spin to kind of what had been. The revivalist era began, especially for death metal. So I want to just highlight that real quick. And one of the bands I want to give the most credit for would be Horrendous. The revitalization of like the mid-90s to the late 90s more progressive style of death metal. I mean, this is an amazing album. My favorite Horrendous album for sure, though I do admit that the new one is close. But tracks like Ozymandias, Polaris, and Stillborn Gods just make this album a near perfect listening experience. So, Horrendous definitely did a lot for the revitalization of death metal in the 2010s and really throughout the whole decade. With doom metal, actually, I think Copious has done a lot to really bring a more emotional heavy metal style to doom, and I'm seeing a lot more bands trying to emulate the sound that Copious started. So Copious style is just such a cool reinterpretation of traditional heavy metal mixed with like the slower, more brutal death metal sections of death doom. And I think they nailed it on their debut album from 2015, Absolution. And look, I got the shirt, and guess what? This is what's been playing in the background. So I think Copious has done a lot for doom metal in this era, and they're an important band to keep in mind when looking back in the rear view about why the metal scene looks how it looks currently. And then one last band I think helped to revitalize an important genre, Eternal Champion with heavy metal. This one came out in 2016, and it's one of my favorite albums from that year, and I think it really spun heavy metal on its head and really helped to bring about the sound of American power metal again to the forefront. Like, this is some epic shit, but not epic in like a Halloween kind of way, but epic in like a Manila Road, Vicious Rumors kind of way. This is some American heavy metal right here, and I just love that it reeks of that sound. And the riffs on here are amazing. The songwriting on here is phenomenal. How they play around with the dynamics really helps everything sink in. Tracks like I Am the Hammer, Last King of Pictum, and Invoker really seal the deal on this one. And I think you can owe a lot of thanks to Eternal Champion for this new wave of traditional heavy metal scene that's really sweeping America and really just all over in general. They're an important band for this era. Well, folks, there you go. That's kind of a couple points of why I think that 2010s was an important era for metal music. I definitely want to know if you agree or disagree. I'm of course curious because, I think I'm biased, so I want to get different opinions. For you, did the points that I made in this video ring true? Or do you kind of disagree with where I'm coming from? And do you think that this was just another, so-so year or era for metal music? I'm definitely curious. This is a topic I'm actually really interested in because, as I said, this is my starting point. This is where I base a lot of my opinions from. What music was released between 2010 and 2015, 2016. Funny how that works, huh? But hey, thanks for dealing with me for this long. Thanks for watching. Drink good beer, listen to good metal. Cheers.